On the build show today, we're going to be tackling an age-old question. When I add exterior insulation to my house, what do I do with my windows? Build show today is sponsored by my friends at Proseco and Rockwool. Let's get going. All right guys, so you know the deal. If you're adding exterior insulation to your house, just about every window in the world that I've seen, at least the ones sold in America, have a nailing flange that's going to give you about 1.25 inches of depth, which works great when you're putting your standard hardy plank siding and trim on like you're seeing here. But what happens when you want to add some exterior insulation? And of course, builders all over the US are being actually not just voluntarily doing it, which many are like we are, but codes are changing. And in many parts of the country, it's code to add R5, R10, sometimes more of exterior insulation to the outside of the building. So for instance, this nice R8 Rockwool comfort board bat is 2 inches thick. If I were to put this right up against the window flange, you see that I'm coming out from the window, and now all of a sudden, what am I going to do with all my finishes, with my siding, my trim, all that sort of thing? Now on the build show today, I'm going to give you 4 ways to do that. And let's start over here actually with this method. So on this opening, you'll see here we've got pretty standard zip system window install. Check out another video I made on how to do this. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to install the window right here at the shear wall, at this line right here, so that everything is quote unquote normal. And then we're going to make 3 options for an exterior window jamb extension. Now there's a couple ways to do that. One of the kind of easiest ways to do it is to use a 1x4 trim. Now in this mock-up that I made, the 1x4 is a PVC product, a cellular PVC exterior trim. And you see all we're doing is just making a square box out of that. And then we're gonna slide it over the window after it's installed. Pretty simple. And then later we can come on and put our hardy, our trim, whatever other finishes we want up to that. It's kind of a nice modern look too. Now another method instead of that, if you want an even thinner profile and maybe more of a contemporary exterior, is just to use an L flashing. It's basically a sheet metal that I'll get bent by my roofer or my flashing company. You can get it in a color to match the window trim. So in this case, I got this one bent to match the black on my Geldwin window over here. And all we're doing to do is basically just like that first one, we're going to picture frame that window in an L flashing. Really pretty straightforward. It's not too hard to learn. Now, if this was going to be a final install, I'd actually rivet my corners on this. But in this demo, I just caulked the corners because I just wanted to show you basically how to do it. I'm not giving you all the install methods today. I'm really just trying to show you the options. Now, the third method on this innie window, as I like to call it, is to make a little bit more of an elaborate trim profile, and that's actually the one that I like the best and probably what I'm going to use for my house here. This is a mock-up on the back of my house. We're actually working on my real remodel house. Now this one I like. Basically it's that same 1x4 picture framing, but I've left the bottom out because I wanted to make a sill that would be more like a proper old school window sill. I'm going for kind of a modern farmhouse look on this house, and so I ripped a 2x6 cedar. I put a kerf cut under the bottom to break that water tension. I primed it all, and then the rest of the mock-up is all made from Hardy's 1x4. Now, you can use 3/4 or 5/4 Hardy. I tend to prefer the 5/4. I like a little bit thicker material, but one of the beauties about the Hardy is we can actually nail it with a 15 gauge exterior trim nail. And so this is simply nailed together. Pretty straightforward. I think that's probably what I'm gonna go for here. Now the fourth option is what we're looking at over here, and this is a little bit non-standard. So let me walk you through the steps here. Let me rewind time a little bit. So what we did here was when we got the opening roughed for the window, we added 1.5 inches in all dimensions, basically 3 inches to the height, 3 inches to the width. And then we added to that rough opening a 2x buck material. The way that we're going to decide how far out that is we want to measure the thickness of our insulation. So in this case, I've got 2-inch thick insulation. And then we're going to add in the dimension of our rain screen on the outside. And I would tell you, anytime we're doing an exterior insulation and a siding, we want that rain screen, vital to have. So that shows that from the shear wall I want to add 2 3/4 inches. So basically I took a 2x10, ripped it down so that it would stick out 2 3/4 inches. And here's where the fun comes in. How do you waterproof that if you're using traditional flashing type materials? Very, very difficult. But in this case, let me walk you through the steps. It's really, really easy with Proseco's Fast Flash system. Let me start at the WRB. So we did a peel and stick WRB on this house. This would be a vapor open assembly. This is Delta Vent SA, a nice high perm house wrap that's peel and stick, so we've got really good air tightness. We're going to be able to dry through that in a cold climate. But then this flashing for this is really simple with Proseco's Fast Flash. If you're not familiar with this, the commercial guys have used it for decades now, but it's really become a new thing in the residential world, even in the last 2 or 3 years. This Fast Flash is basically a, for lack of a better term, kind of like a bed liner that we're going to custom make on the whole outside of that assembly. Now I taped around this with just some blue tape so I could keep a nice straight line. You don't have to do that, but of course when clients look at our work, it's not necessarily about workmanship. They don't know craftsmanship, but they know cleanliness. So that's why I like this nice tape line. You also want to verify with your manufacturer that the house wrap you use is compatible with Proseco. And any one of these makers of these house wraps will give you a letter to say, yes, that's compatible, or no, it's not. Now, if this was a white traditional house wrap, the Proseco may not stick, but this material by Delta Vent SA, it kind of feels like a jeans material, sticks great. And several others, it's going to stick really well, just the same as it did on the Zip system, if you've seen my Zip 2.0 video. We're going to run it out in an S-shaped bead. We're going to use like a Bondo type scraper to scrape it out. As long as we don't see wood through it, we know we're thick enough. And basically you can see we're doing the entire opening. Now on the head, I do like, if possible, to flap over top of the head my Delta Vent SA, but you're going to see later I made a custom head flashing for this, as well as head flashings for the any window, so that if any water got back there, I could dump that water to the front side of the window and not have it back there. But once this Proseco Fast Flash is done, that window opening is money. Absolutely love that. It's totally waterproof. And then we're going to set the window in a fairly straightforward fashion right onto this. Now for this mock-up, I'm going to take this back down and I want to reuse this window for another display. So I did not use Fast Flash behind the nailing flange for this mock-up. I would do that though, and we want to do that in a U-shaped pattern with no Fast Flash at the sill. And then to finish off the install and to make it airtight, we're going to go on the inside here, and we're not going to use low expansion spray foam like is fairly typical in residential jobs. We're going to use a rod and caulk method, where we're going to use a backer rod all the way around that window on all 4 sides. And then Proseco makes a product called Air Dam that's meant for this application. We're basically going to use a sausage tube of Air Dam and caulk all 4 sides all the way around the back side of that window. That's going to give us a perfectly airtight install on this window. And it also means if something happened to this window 10, 20, 30 years from now and we developed a leak in the corner, it's going to hit that back dam and it's going to run forward. It won't be able to run back into the house. You know, I also like that Proseco's all the way back in, all the way to the back side of the window. It's really important. Now you didn't have to go quite as far back as I did. You could have taped that to save a little bit of material, but in this case it worked really well. And then the Rockwool, just like on the other ones, is really straightforward. All we're going to do is tack this Rockwool up. Now this Rockwool is a little heavy. If you've not worked with it before, you really are supposed to have gloves on. And it cuts with a serrated knife, kind of like a bread knife. Pretty straightforward to install. Now I use cap fasteners on this, but if your cap fastener is in the way of where your 1x4 goes, don't worry about that. You can just back that right out. All those are doing are just holding it in place until my rain screen battens on. And my rain screen battens are going to apply that pressure on there when I put those in with a pneumatic gun. I've got my velocity screws on there, just sucks that right in. Now be careful though, if you're using an impact gun, and you had a small section like this, you could actually overdrive that and you could compress that comfort board insulation a little bit. So if you're doing a long run, you might want a string line from your 2 outside pieces, run a string across there, and that way when you're sucking your battens in place, you're not over tightening those. And then you can see after we've installed our trim and our hardy, from the outside, you have no idea this is a thick wall, or what I would call an outie window, because the window's set normal like any other window. But behind that, I've got my hardy plank, I've got this nice big air gap, 3/4 inch air gap, so any caulking that cracks here, anything that happens here, that water is gonna come back here to this ventilated cavity, which is gonna be vented on the top and the bottom. If we were really doing this for real, we'd put a bug screen down here, we'd put a bug screen in the top, and we'd make sure that was an open vented cavity. Any water that gets in there is gonna fall out harmlessly. That also means that our paint films and our finishes are gonna last, honestly, twice as long. And then you're gonna see after we put the rain screen on there and the hardy, it looks like a normal install. Now I just did a corner here because I'm just trying to give you the flavor on this. But those are 4 good options for installing your window on the outside. 3 any methods that are basically exterior window jambs, and 1 method that's what I would call an Audi window. And as you can see with these materials from these manufacturers, everything's gonna be nice and airtight and nice and watertight, which is what I care about. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention, but if you noticed, I'm cutting my overhangs off on this house. Stay tuned to my future videos on the real remodel. We're gonna be doing a thick blanket of exterior insulation on this house on the walls. We're also gonna be running that exterior insulation up to the roof. And I'm gonna be doing what I've heard Joe Stiebrick call a chainsaw retrofit. So stay tuned for some future videos on that. Guys, big thanks to my friends at Proseco and Rockwool for sponsoring today's video. I love working with these companies. These are great manufacturers, but one of the things I like about the build show is that there's no one on set from these companies. I can say what I want, and I love that they're allowing me to show you these systems that really, honestly, they would work with other manufacturers, other types of insulation. These are good companies though, you should check them out. A lot of benefits to Comfort Board, and I do have a Comfort Board video in the works that we'll be publishing soon, talking about fire resistance in particular, and how you can use Comfort Board in WUI areas, that's wildland urban interface areas, which is code in a good part of the country because you've got a bunch of urban areas that are intersecting with fire prone areas. So I'll be talking about how to use that in the future on a fire rated assembly on the exterior of your house. Anyways guys, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, hit that subscribe button below, and oh, by the way, don't forget to go over to buildshownetwork.com. Every single day of the week, we've got a brand new video published from job sites around the US. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, otherwise we'll see you next time on The Build Show.